Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your existential Mr. Rogers, as John Campea would call me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and this is the John Campea Show Mailbag from Monday, August 8th, 2022. And we're going to see, as you know, during the John Campea Show, we open the Super Chats up for a tiny brief fraction, and if you get a question in, you know we're going to read it live on the show today. But if you look at that indicator, that link right down below, you can send us 24/7 a comment, a tip, a review, whatever you want to send us, and we'll read it here on the mailbag if we deem it appropriate. So on this wonderful Monday, let's see what you guys have for me. We start with, well, what do we start with? We start with the Filthy Fella. The Filthy Fella. How you doing, Filthy Fella? I see what you did there. Hey, Rob and or John. Well, it's me. The reviews of House of the Dragon seem good so far. Hopefully it's great. Do you think if it's a success that it could go as far as Game of Thrones, as in multiple seasons? Or do you think it'll just be a nifty little prequel? Well, I think the thought is, hopefully, that it will go multiple seasons. You know, maybe 8 seasons the way the original Game of Thrones did. I think when you make shows these days, you're hoping that it will go places. It'll do things. It'll be wondrous. It'll be a water cooler show, and people won't be able to hurt themselves too. My God, what's going to happen? It hurts. I need to know. But yeah, I think that's what the hope is. I mean, the Targaryen Civil War, the family Civil War. I love it. Can't wait to see. Is that kind of like the War of the Roses? I don't know, but I think it could be good. It looks great. The earlier reviews, if there are any indication to go by, it looks like it's going to be great. I hope it's great. I really want it to be good. I am not like John. I'm not one of the people that liked the last season of Game of Thrones, but I do love Game of Thrones. I think it's a stunning achievement for television. So, you know, what can you say? You know what you can't say? Victor Vision. You can say Victor Vision. Hey, John, or me, about Stallone not having the rights to Rocky. Have you seen the movie The Brawler? It's a movie that points out where Stallone got the ideas for writing out Rocky, where Chuck Wepner went the distance with Ali. Wepner I can't read this. You know why I can't read it? I can't see. It's so hot in here, and I'm sweating, and my glasses are fogging up. So, where Chuck Wepner went the distance with Ali, and Wepner sewed Stallone for Rocky. I think I've heard that before. But that makes sense. I mean, you know, most of the great stories are based on things that really happened. So, hey, I love that idea. But, you know, he doesn't have the rights because he didn't negotiate for the rights back when he made Rocky in the 70s. And as I always say, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And in Hollywood, it ain't show friends, it's show business. And you have to make sure you do good business if you want good show friends. And Stallone, I mean, he made a lot of money. It seems odd that he's asking for this. He doesn't own Rocky. At the time when he made it originally, he didn't have the money to bankroll it himself. He couldn't find that money, so Irwin Winkler and Robert Chardoff did. And they own it because of that. So, yeah. But that's interesting about Chuck Wepner. I think I've heard that before, but it's nice to once again be reminded of it. DKO sends in a tip and says, hey, Campea crew. Uh-oh, did I just push that off? No, there we go. Hey, Campea crew. Regarding DC's new 10-year plan and needing comic book geeks with film creative abilities at the helm, my maybe unconventional but perhaps hidden gem of a choice, Kevin Smith. Thanks for using this on the show. Laugh out loud. Bring on the filthy. You know, a lot of people have brought Kevin Smith up, and I'm a big fan of Kevin Smith. But Kevin Smith doesn't have the experience producing large tentpole films. It's one thing to make indie cinema. It's a whole other thing dealing with the relationships and dealing with the simple size and scope of these giant tentpole superhero movies. And while Kevin Smith might be good with the creative, he just doesn't have the experience to deal with making movies on that scope and scale. So that's the one reason that I would say he probably isn't the best choice. You know. Logan Eckstein says, hey, John and Rob. Well, it's me. Batgirl was shelved due to tax loopholes being exploited. If this sounds familiar, it's because they did the same thing with the Swamp Thing series a few years ago for the same kind of tax loophole, just in case you forgot or didn't know. That's interesting, Logan. Yeah, I mean, look, again, the studios, especially in cost-cutting measures, are going to resort to these kinds of things. At least Swamp Thing was seen. You know, they released it. So maybe they did it because they didn't want to make multiple seasons. But I liked the show. I was sorry to see it go. It definitely a bummer. But this is an interesting. I mean, almost $100 million movie, $90 million if you believe reports about reshoots and things and what they still had to put into it. I mean, this is pretty unprecedented, and I do feel bad for everybody involved. But yeah, it's Zaslav the axe is swinging, man, and he's doing whatever he can to make up. I think it's like a $3 billion deficit or something they have to make up. It isn't good. It isn't good. Yeah, so it's sad. Silly Goose says, thanks to Rob's recommendations a few years back, Dark has become my all-time favorite TV show. It inspired me to learn German. Wow. My goal is to one day be able to watch it without subtitles. I would pay to watch this show again for the first time. Silly Goose, you know what? Dark is incredible. And, it's funny. I tell people that when it starts out, the beginning of it is really no indication of where the show is going to go. So you have to stick with it. It is a time travel show. It deals with time travel in a very interesting way. If you're a time travel fan and you have not watched Dark on Netflix, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's funny, a Silly Goose. I mean, I'm not going to call you silly for wanting to learn German to watch Dark without subtitles, because I still think you have to watch it in German. I don't think the English language dub does it any favors. But I love hearing, first of all, one, that you watched something, as I told you, or I at least mentioned something that you went and sought out on your own. I think that's great. On the show, obviously, when we can expose people to new things, that's one of the great joys of doing entertainment news and using my vast repository of knowledge and opinion to hopefully inspire the next generation to pick up what I've already watched and enjoyed. So I love hearing you say that. Book Lover, who loves to cook, sends in one of two, I believe. Hi, guys. Love the show. Thanks for all you do. I think movie making is similar to book publishing. A publishing house pays in advance to an author for a book, but the publisher still has the right to not publish the book after the book is completed. If the book doesn't meet the publisher's expectations, example, poor quality, book chapters are submitted to an editor for review and quality control to prevent the problem of the book not being up to snuff. Well, usually that's true, and when they're making big tentpole properties, they're supposed to have been watching as they're making these things, but book publishing is not quite. Making movies is a little bit, it's vastly more complex. And there's a lot more people involved, and there's a lot more, importantly, contracts involved. But I understand what you're saying, and you're not too far off base, I have to say. Book Lover Loves to Cook goes on and says, sadly, it seems that Batgirl didn't have a second set of eyes during production to make sure it was on track. Not the cast and crew's fault, but the failure of the previous Warner Brothers administration. Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, I find the whole thing, I can't believe it happened. It's such a strange situation, and I do feel for everybody who's involved. It shouldn't have happened, and it's going to be reverberating through Hollywood for a while to come, and it's going to taint the new Zaslav administration over at Warner Discovery. Who wants to work for them? Korea Got Soul says, hey, Rob. Oi, Ray. So I heard you guys talking a lot about which character should be the next Black Panther. But what if it was Everett Ross that became the next Black Panther, maybe even just for a moment? After all, he does have a military background. I would like to believe that that Black Panther has to have some ties to the land itself, the land that Wakanda is. So unless you're Wakandan, I don't think you could be Black Panther. I mean, look, I'm making this up. I'm pulling this out of my ass. But I would think that being Wakandan is part of the essence of what it means to be Black Panther. So I don't think anybody who wasn't of Wakanda could be Black Panther. Now, again, it is true. I'm making this up. I'm pulling this out of. This isn't necessarily true, but I am making it up. But I think it sounds good to me. At least you got to be part of the land. But Everett Ross, I think you have sound reasoning. But unless you're Wakandan, I don't think you can be Black Panther. Keep moving. Says, hi, gang. I agree The Flash should be released due to other artists involved. However, I do think WB should make an apology. They don't condone Miller's behavior, and a tiny percentage made from the movie is given to women's charities as refuge. Well, here's the thing, keep moving. Warner Brothers, think about Warner Brothers is in the business of making movies. is everybody then, is your place of work, is your place of business responsible for what you do when you're not there? I mean, that's a job that you go and just because that you're making a product that's being consumed by the masses, a company can't be responsible for who works for them on their own time. The company can fire somebody because of bad behavior and get rid of whatever product they were involved with and whatever they want to do, but a company is not responsible for what somebody does in their off hours. Only they are. And if you were to do that, why would anybody be able to work anywhere? You couldn't, why would you take that risk? If that were the case, then a company would be responsible insurance-wise. You'd be responsible for everyone's life off when they're off the clock. And you can't expect, I mean, I love your sentiment. I mean, I do. But I think, listen, there's a lot of really interesting things that have been coming out about this Ezra Miller case. I think we all need to wait and see all the truth that's coming out, because there's so much stuff that's been coming out lately that, I mean, he's a cult leader, he's this, he's that. I think that there's a reason why Warner Brothers is still moving forward with The Flash. And I think we all need to just wait and see. All we have is hearsay and crazy things and various, reports, legal reports, but it's not like he's been thrown in jail for any length of time. And I'm not condoning his behavior. I think what he's been doing is terrible, ridiculous. But I don't understand all of it. All I get is this, what I've read in TMZ or whatever. I think we need to wait and see exactly what has been happening. I'd love to read a real investigative journalist's account of all of this stuff, because there's a lot of crazy things that are being said, and all we know right now is that Warner Brothers still is releasing The Flash, and they must have a reason for that. I don't know, but I don't think you can hold a company responsible for what their employees do on off hours, because that would open a can of worms that I don't think could ever be dealt with. But you know what can be dealt with? What can be dealt with is the word from today's sponsor of the Mailbag.
We want to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's video, Raycon. Now, guys, you've heard me talk about the fact that part of my morning routine is getting on my treadmill. And when I do, I always have my Raycon earbuds there to listen to my podcasts and YouTube videos. I go to them every morning. Raycon's everyday earbuds look, feel, and sound better than ever. With optimized gel tips for the perfect in-ear fit, these earbuds are so comfortable and they will not budge. Trust me. Raycon gives you 8 hours of playtime and 32-hour battery life. And the best part for me is that Raycons are priced just right. You get quality audio at half the price of other premium audio brands. That's half the price. And with premium features like noise isolation, awareness mode, and I personally love the earbud tap functions, it's perfect for when I'm on the treadmill. So guys, go to buyraycon.com/Campea today and get 15% off your Raycon order. That's buyraycon.com/Campea to get 15% off. buyraycon.com/Campea.
And thank you to today's sponsor for generously sponsoring today's episode of the John Campea Show, Mailbag. That brings us to Pappy Grogu. Says, I have a question for the greatest damn movie team on earth. Well, thank you for that. Do you think the Joker made $1 billion on a $6 million budget? It was actually a $65 million budget because of Joaquin or because of the Joker name. I believe that Gabriel Macht was in. If Gabriel Macht was in it, it would have the same results. No, I think ultimately it was all of those things. I think a movie succeeds because the movie itself is great. Certainly Joaquin Phoenix is a big part of it, but Todd Phillips, the director, was a big part of it. The screenplay was a big part of it. The way it looked. I think overall it was the film itself that was most successful. And I think that's true of every movie. I mean, I really do. It's the movie itself that carries it forward and brings success. Silly Goose is back, 1 of 3. Hello, Probably Rob. Hello, I'm Probably Rob. Maybe that's what I'll be called from now on, Probably Rob. On the very day that I write this, I concluded my first watch-through of Game of Thrones. This show was magnificent. It is difficult to pick a favorite character. I like Cersei, Jaime, Jon, Jorah, Daenerys, and Tyrion a lot. I thought the ever-so-controversial Season 8 was bonkers good. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. I thought everything made sense, especially choosing Bran to be king. He is basically the wisest fella in Westeros. Great choice for a king. I thought the end of Daenerys' story was tragic but ultimately necessary after the penultimate episode to the series. Overall, I'm extremely satisfied with the series, and I am eagerly awaiting House of the Dragon and this Jon Snow show. Well, Silly Goose, I think no doubt that Game of Thrones is one of the most impressive feats of television we have ever seen. And whether you like the final season or not, I'm glad that you did. No one can deny how ambitious and how beautifully executed the show is. It is a stunning achievement from a production standpoint. I mean, the show, you're really immersed in Westeros. It is so gripping and so compelling. And, I think that a lot of people, at least for me too, the reason that the last season was unsatisfying was for a couple of main reasons. One was the entire threat of the White Walkers and the Night's King and all that. What did it mean? I mean, all they did was, what did they want? Why were they a threat? Why did they care? Obviously, what bothered me is that the White Walkers, their leadership, and they had leadership, we were shown they had people that were leading them. Well, they had a strategy as well, but what did they want? What did they hope to achieve? And after the Battle of Winterfell, it was just over, and we knew nothing about them. So they were almost like paper tigers, and I think it was frustrating for an audience to love being threatened by the White Walkers. Everyone was scared, like, oh my God, this is the apocalypse, this is the end of times, and yet the final battle, it pretty much became, Arya Stark taking out the Night's King. Well, while I guess it kind of worked, I think the existential threat that they posed, when they were vanquished, you kind of wonder, well, what was that all about? And that was sort of not satisfying. And then, of course, Daenerys, she was learning. She had to temper her leadership abilities. I mean, obviously, she was on a teeter-totter, seesawing between being a benevolent ruler and being a dictator. And I think at the end, when she went crazy, everyone's like, well, she was always going to go crazy because her father was crazy. Well, that was, I felt, and I think a lot of people felt that was kind of a cop-out. We wanted to see her make a decision of some kind. And when she just decided to go off the deep end and kill a bunch of people and blow up half of King's Landing, it was like, well, that also didn't seem like what we were following. We were wondering, we wanted to see where she was going to wind up. And, a lot of people, she went crazy. And I found that unsatisfying. I thought from an intellectual standpoint, I wanted more. But a lot of people like you were satisfied. And you're not wrong. And maybe I was asking for something. I mean, it's funny. We all want what we want, whether it's what the showrunners are going to give us or not. And clearly the showrunners were going in a different direction. And that's fine. I mean, a lot of people love that. So, but I think overall, as you just saw, it's one of the greatest, if not the greatest TV show ever made. Shane Roxas, 1 of 3. I just watched Prey and really enjoyed it. I watched it as well. I wouldn't say it's the best since the original because I really like Predators, so do I. And I think that it holds the spot of second to the original. I probably think that. You're probably right there too. One thing I often wonder is, why hasn't Arnold returned to the franchise? In this age of older actors returning to their past characters, wouldn't it be dope to have an old Arnold return as Dutch to kick some Predator ass once more? Shane finally finishes up by saying, obviously the money's got to be right and the story has to call for it, but am I mad? Has not one writer thought, hey, let's bring Arnold back? I think the time is right for Arnold and the Predator to face off once again. Well, Shane, I'm with you there, buddy. I think that would be great. I would love to watch Arnold come back and kick Predator booty. But, I think that he's getting older, and what story could you conceivably, maybe if he was leading a group of people, but I can't imagine him going mano-a-mano with the Predator now, just because of how old he is and how formidable the Predators are and their weaponry is. But, I mean, if you brought him back and he was leading, he was like the strategy behind the muscle, I think you could do some kind of an ensemble thing like the first one was, and maybe he winds up as the last man standing and his age becomes another way to add suspense. But I don't think you're wrong. I mean, maybe it can be done. Again, it really depends on the story. But you know what? I'd love to see Arnold come back and kick little Predator ass again. I think that'd be great. Just like you said, who wouldn't want to see that? Mark Ting says, hi, have you seen and would you review the new Ron Howard movie 13 Lives on Amazon Prime? It is about the Thai cave rescue incident back in 2018 where it had the attention of the world. I would say it's up there with his greatest work like Apollo 13. Well, Mark, I have to tell you, I watched 13 Lives this weekend, and I'll tell you, the movie is almost 2.5 hours long, and I was riveted, man. I was riveted the whole time. Those scenes, I thought Viggo Mortensen and Colin Farrell were great, based on those the two real guys, and I thought it moved at a really great clip, and I have to say, I really dug it, man, and it was. I think you're right. I think it was some of Ron Howard's great work. I think it was great to see him come back and knock it out of the park like that. And I have to tell you, God, those scenes when they were swimming around were claustrophobic. And I'm like, oh my God, you really felt just how hard it was to be able to rescue those kids, man. But I'm with you. I thought it's a terrific film. I think everybody should watch it. Really, really, really good. Hi, Rob. Did you know that Tom Sturridge, the Sandman, shared a house with other fellow young British actors when he moved to the U.S.? The other members of that house, Robert Pattinson, Andrew Garfield, Eddie Redmayne, Jamie Dornan, and Charlie Cox. Well, those are probably the best actors of their generation. Doesn't surprise me. There used to be a thing in the late 80s, like Shane Black was a part of it, Fred Dekker was a part of it. They wrote about this a lot called the Pad O' Guys, about all these young budding screenwriters and directors all living together. I think that that probably helps the creative juices. I bet they got a lot of ladies too, so it doesn't surprise me. I think it's great. I think it's great you go to a foreign country, you're trying to make it in Hollywood, and to have a support system like that is really, I think, tremendous. So yeah, great, and it's pretty cool. And look where they've all come. That was one powerhouse of a house that they all lived in. Also, a fun fact for certain members of the crew, I've seen Andrew Garfield mention his childhood friend by name 2 or 3 times in interviews on the press junket last year. His name is Terry McGinnis. No joke. Well, Liam, as you know, I'm part of the Batman Beyond crew, and I want to see a Batman Beyond film. Yes, I do. Angela Dashner, the lovely Angela Dashner, sends in a $50 tip. My God, Angela, thanks for supporting the channel in that way, and I'll take that personally, supporting me. Hey, Rob, so excited Fathom Events is playing The Wrath of Khan on September 4th for the 40th anniversary. I saw Star Trek The Motion Picture in May. So cool to get to see these on the big screen again. Did you know about this? And I love the show, John. Angela, I did know about this. I went and saw Star Trek The Motion Picture, the director's cut. I've seen it twice for Fathom Events now, and I can't wait to get the British box set, the British set. It has an extra disc in it of Star Trek The Motion Picture. It's one of the great things about the new version of Star Trek The Motion Picture is the sound mix. It's thunderous. You can really hear, they went back to the original ADR stem, so you can really hear the voices now. The mix is really terrific, and I think you're going to have a great time. Well, that was on Star Trek The Motion Picture, and a great time at Star Trek 2. I mean, it's funny, seeing Star Trek 2 on the big screen, we've all seen it on TV, but you forget what an experience is on the big screen. Here's a fun fact, on the day Star Trek 2 The Wrath of Khan opened, Star Trek 2 The Wrath of Khan opened, and before they, on opening day for us, I went to a theater called the John Dance Theater in Bellevue, Washington. They had a laser show before, they showed the trailer, but they had laserium lasers inside, and they smoked up the theater. It was awesome. I saw it 4 times opening day, because I'm that kind of dude. But yeah, it was an incredible time seeing that movie for the first time. It opened in the United States on June 4th, 1982. And here's another fun fact. That was the first day I went to KB Toys, and I saw the first 8 He-Man figures, and I bought those He-Man figures, and they were under my seat when I saw it all 4 times. I don't know why I remember that or what that means in the grand scheme of things, but it's true, Angela. See, there's just something you got to know about me today that you didn't know before. I'm sure you're a richer person because of it. But first of all, thank you so much for the support. That's very sweet of you. AV Cali says, I think the next Batman movie should feature Clayface. His origin story is interesting and tragic. He was an actor who was caught up in so much vanity. He resorted to a cream to make him look younger and was left horribly disfigured and with powers. As long as, I think that's actually a good idea, as long as they can make you believe it within the universe that Matt Reeves has created. I think when you lean heavily into a fantasy-based character, a character that is unreal, so to speak, which is kind of crazy. All characters in Batman movies are unreal, but you know what I mean? I mean, those movies are striving to create verisimilitude, reality, and by having an unreal character that has powers like a Clayface, it has to be done well. But I do like the the idea, the way you just put it, somebody whose vanity led them to becoming horribly disfigured. We've seen it in real life. And it would be just hard if he had Clayface powers. It'd be tough to make you believe in that, but I definitely would be there for it. I think it's a pretty good idea. The Canon sends in a tip and says, one of two. If you were on the creative team for DC's 10-year plan, what 3 movies would you start with? Who would be your big bad? I would go Superman Year 1 with mentions of Batman in Year 3. Then Future Barry preventing an Amazonian Atlantean war. Then a solo Batman movie. This all would lead up to the Question from another universe being transported to the main universe by a device created by the Owl. The Question comes to warn of Brainiac making his way through the multiverse. I think, canon, those are really great ideas. You know what I would do? I would want to make Kingdom Come. My 10-year plan would be to lead up to Kingdom Come and show the world, make a Superman movie, make a Batman movie, make a Wonder Woman movie, and introduce all these younger characters and show the world kind of changing and going to hell. And you could have it mirror our own world, the rise of social media. What does that do to superheroes with powers? And you have the old guard. You'd have Green Lantern. You would have Hawkman. You would have the Atom. You'd have all the classic Martian Manhunter, all the classic Justice League members, and maybe do stories about them, the Justice League, and then the rise of these new characters that we saw in Kingdom Come. So you could give people the old and the familiar, and then make characters of the new characters, and then you lead up to them clashing in Kingdom Come. That would be my idea. That's what I would do, given a choice. If somebody asked, that's what I would do. Daniel Mools says, "Hi everyone, first time tipper." Well, thank you, Daniel. I saw you guys were all very excited for the Light and Magic documentary. I've just watched it in one evening after getting hooked, and I want to know your thoughts. It reminded me I fucking love movies. Laugh out loud, and thanks for great content and bring on the filthy. Well, Daniel, first of all, great tip. Thank you for that. I loved Light and Magic. I grew up reading a magazine called Cinefex, published by a guy named Don Shea, and it was an in-depth magazine that started in 1980 that would cover the effects industry. And it was sometimes, like the first issue, it had 2 articles in it. One was about the making of Star Trek the Motion Picture, and one was about the making of Alien. They would do sometimes whole issues on one movie, like Star Wars films or Blade Runner. And watching Light and Magic reminded me of reading Cinefex magazine. And like you said, I was so immersed in it. I loved it so much, seeing the people, seeing the behind-the-scenes footage. It was just wonderful, a wonderful experience. And exactly, you nailed it when you said it reminded me you fucking love movies. It reminded me of that too. And it showed, the awe and wonder of what the effects industry brought us. And it really showed us, Star Wars was really ground zero of modern filmmaking. And you got to see it, how ILM was forging ahead and creating things that had never been done before. And I loved it. It's a wonderful documentary, and it's one of my favorite things I've watched all year. The ABK sends in a tip and says, "Hey, John Campea Show team. For the last few days, I've been trying to figure out how DC goes from here in regards to their movies. A part of me really wants to keep good elements like Momoa and Cavill, but there may have been too many gaffes now. Would you start fresh?" You know what? I wouldn't, because the Momoa Aquaman movie made $1 billion. The Joker movie made $1 billion. I think you could do a Superman movie. I think people see, the thing is, I think people like Ben Affleck as Batman, and they like Henry Cavill as Superman. You give them great stories, great scripts, and you could move from there. And as I said, moving up, I really want them to do Kingdom Come. So if you were to do that, then you could keep those characters, because in Kingdom Come, it's about older versions of those characters, and then the young usurpers trying to take the throne of what they are. And that's what I would do, given a choice. I would do that. I would retain them and keep the best elements. I'd even keep Gal Gadot. You just have to give her another great movie, because, boy, Wonder Woman 84, what a mess. Did not dig it. So that's what I would do. Blake says, "One of my favorite things is flashback cinema at my local theater on Sundays. My kids got to see Raiders of the Lost Ark for their first time there. There's magic in those early Spielberg films he captures that's just different. What is it?" Blake, first of all, you're a great parent. And the fact that you take your kids to see these classic films on the big screen where they're meant to be seen, you're instilling in them a sense of wonder that I think the modern age is stripping away from kids. And so, good for you, first of all. So I hope they're lucky that they know that how lucky they are to have you as a parent. They must. So good on you for doing that, and please continue to do so. My friend Mark Altman, who I made Free Enterprise with, does that with his kids, and I think they've done quite well. They've done quite well, and they just went and saw Tron and Tron Legacy for the 40th anniversary of Tron at the El Capitan Theater over the weekend. So that was fun. What magic did Spielberg's movies have? You know what? I think what it had was it had a filmmaker who, and all the people working for him, were trying to do the best work they could do. They weren't working on a franchise. They weren't thinking about all the money they were going to make. They were just thinking about the magic that they were wielding. And because back then movies were a lot cheaper. I mean, hey, look, everybody wants to make money. But back then, because no one's thinking about 10 years down the road, everybody was focused on making the best movie they could. And, Spielberg, when he made Raiders, it was interesting. He'd made Jaws and Close Encounters that were huge hits. Then he made a passion project of his, which was 1941, that didn't do well. It was a big, overblown mess, and Hollywood was kind of like, even though he'd made Close Encounters and Jaws, they're like, what the hell, man? So he had something to prove. George Lucas said, look, Spielberg, even though they were good friends, you gotta make this fast. You can't go over budget, and you can't just shoot. So you had all of these concerns kind of coming together, and they were concentrating on making the best movie they could, and it was magical. And I think that unfortunately now, movies are now more. Movies have always been a collision of art and commerce. Now it's all about commerce. Everybody wants to make money, and I get it. Who doesn't want to make money? But back then, it was the movies themselves that it was the hope that you'd make great movies and that they would make money, but everybody was concentrating more on the movies themselves, and they were given the time. But that's because they cost a lot less, so the risk was mitigated. Hitchcock is the GOAT, says, hi, Rob, and maybe John. I'm so looking forward to House of the Dragon and possibly the Jon Snow sequel show. But if it were up to me, I'd want to journey west of Westeros with Arya Stark, since it's literally uncharted territory. For me, that's the more interesting story, since it wouldn't be beholden to anything that came before. Arya was so much fun. Also, Rob, what is the primary show on your channel when tips are read? It's Robservations. I sent a 4-part tip in on 8-1. Is it Robservations? Yes, I have your I have your tips, and the reason I held off on Robservations is my main show, and the reason that I held off on reading them, I wanted to do them on a weekday show that has the most readership, because you answered my question. I asked you what Hitchcock the GOAT. I asked you. You are Hitchcock the GOAT. What are your favorite Hitchcock movies? So I wanted to start off, look for the next Robservations that's going to drop probably in the next couple days. And that's where you'll see your tips read. I did save your tips, but yours specifically because of that, because of your answer. And I want to make more of a meal of it. So normally I read them like on this show the day I get them. But you sent those in not when I was doing a show, and I have not forgotten. Do not worry, my friend. And as far as Westeros and Arya Stark go, I think that'd be great too, but I don't think that George R.R. Martin knows what's west of Westeros. I think it would be much harder for him to come up with something out of whole cloth. He'd literally have to do a bunch of world building first and come up with that place. So I think the reason they're going back to the Targaryen Civil War is he's already put down a lot of ink on paper about that storyline. So for him, it's easier to do it. At least that's what I would assume. So that's probably why that's what we're getting. I'm looking really forward to House of the Dragon. I think it looks great. I love the idea of a Targaryen Civil War. I think that's really cool. So we'll see if it is indeed cool. Who knows? But I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it a lot. Mostly Mo. Let's see if I can fix this, because I can't scroll down. Let me see if I can scroll down. Okay, I'm going to bring these two last. These are the last two questions, believe it or not. So there you can see them. Mostly Mo said, I decided it was time to finally start collecting physical media. You know, we do a show called Let's Get Physical Media on my channel, Post Geek Singularity, every Sunday. Mike Flanagan is my favorite horror director, so I've started my collection with The Haunting of Hill House and Bly Manor Blu-rays. Have you seen these shows, and what should I get next? Well, was it Black Mass, the last show that he produced, but it's on Netflix, so I don't know if they make it. And then he did Dr. Sleep, which I really liked, the sequel to The Shining. So I think that's definitely something that you can get. I'm a big fan of Flanagan. I think he's the best guy making horror movies right now, too. And congratulations on becoming a physical media guy. Now, I don't know, if you like to collect premium stuff, but you might want to check out a UK distributor, Second Sight. You'll have to have a multi-region player to play the Blu-rays, but Second Sight just put out a beautiful version of Robert Eggers' The Witch, if you like that movie. And there's a lot of great, Kino Lorber is doing some great stuff with horror, and of course Scream Factory put out my own film that I produced, The Hills Run Red, and it's a great Blu-ray. We made it chock full of behind the scenes footage. It's worth getting just for that. So if I can, be self-serving. Tim Tracy sends in a tip and says, no surprise here, Top Gun Maverick just became the 7th highest grossing domestic movie of all time, surpassing Titanic. I love the movie. I just wish it would stop breaking records so I can own it and add it to my movie collection. Steelbook pre-ordered. My Steelbook is also pre-ordered. But you know what's great? What's great about that, Tim, is, first of all, it's great for everybody who made it, and it was great for Tom Cruise for sticking to his guns and not releasing the film in theaters. And I think it's fantastic that they were able to do that. So, yeah, I mean, look, its success is pretty unprecedented. But you know what it is? It's just a great movie. Someone asked earlier about Raiders of the Lost Ark. It kind of felt like a throwback, like the original Top Gun. It was just fun, man. You watch that film, it's a men on a mission, or men and women on a mission. They have an objective. You have this old grizzled character coming back. Like Tom Cruise was the wizard. He was basically Gandalf. And man, it was so much fun to see that film. And it deserves all the kudos it can get. But like you, I have also pre-ordered the Steelbook. I can't wait to get it. And it's going to be great to have both. I have the original Top Gun Steelbook, so it's going to be great to have all those things and to be able to watch them at will, because, man, that movie's going to sound great and it looks great, and I can't wait to watch it in 4K. So, Tim, you're a man after my own heart. I'm right there with you. So, yes. And that brings us, my friends, to an end. We are done with today's mailbag. First of all, I want to thank everybody for generously sending in tips and supporting the channel and giving me great fun things to talk about while you did it. So thanks everyone who supports us here at the John Campea Show. It means a great deal. I, of course, am Robert Meyer Burnett. You can follow me on social media. I am on Instagram at RMBurnett. Find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. Or you can go to my own website, postgeeksingularity.com, or my own YouTube channel, Postgeek Singularity, and catch up with my shows, Robservations, or Let's Get Physical Media, or Midnight Musings, or Midnight Metal, or some of those things. And as always, I will see you every day, each and every day, here on either the John Campea Show or on the John Campea Show Mailbag. And I just want to remind everybody that we've got some great after shows. We're going to do a She-Hulk after show, an Andor after show. We got after shows coming up where we're going to review these things and do them on a daily basis. John should be, if he was watching For All Mankind, would let us do after shows, but maybe one day Rayor and I, maybe for season 4, we will convince John that we should be allowed to do the For All Mankind after show. But you never know. And on that note, thank you, everyone. What a lot of fun this has been. Thanks for listening to me and putting up with the fact that my glasses were fogging up because it's so damn hot in my own home studio. See you soon.